Hi fellows, this is video number 3 in a series of 3 all about the alignment of the gear shifting mechanism between the stick shift and the gearbox, more specific the cables. In video part number 1 we have looked at the working of it, video part number 2 we looked at the installation of the cables, and finally in this last part, part number 3, we'll do the adjustment. So just bear with me because I have my own ways of doing this and you will probably enjoy it. Adjustments of the stick shift mechanism, and more specifically the cables between the stick shift and the gearbox, is not very difficult, and basically you only have 3 adjustments. There is an adjustment at the back of the car on the gearbox where there's a bracket that you can slide back and forward, and if you move the bracket back and forward, and I'll show it to you in a minute, then the stick shift will be either moving backwards or forward. So that's pretty simple and straightforward. The second adjustment is what we call a control or adjustment rod, which is used on the Crossgate cable, and that will either move the stick shift to the right or to the left. So again, depending on what adjustment you do. Now those are the 2 adjustments that you have on the standard cables. So the gear selection, which is moving the stick shift front or backwards, and then you have actually the Crossgate adjustment with the adjustment rod on the gearbox where you can make the stick shift move to the left or to the right. The most important part to know is that the normal default position where the stick shift should be in is in the middle position in neutral between gears 3 and gears 4. That's where the normal position should be, and the stick shift should be straight up. And when I say straight up, it's the bottom part of the stick shift, not the top part here, because there is a band lower down. So it's the bottom part of the stick shift that has to be straight up. It should not be leaning forward, nor backward, nor left, nor right if your cables are adjusted right. Now for motorsport cables, it's exactly the same, but there you have additional adjustment actually on the cables themselves, and I'll show you all that in a few minutes. So this is my method. I've placed a wooden stick between the dashboard and the back of the car, a bit horizontal, and then I taped up what I call a pointer to the bottom part of the stick shift. So it's actually on the vertical side of the stick shift before the actual bend. So the idea is that on the gearbox, the shaft that comes out of it has 3 positions for changing gears, right? So it has the full inward position, it has the middle position, and it has the outward position. And the movement of that shaft on the gearbox will move either the stick shift forward a bit or a bit backward. And in the center, it should be in the middle position. So the movement from the center to the back, or from the movement from the center to the front, should be equal distance. And that's what we're going to align now, and that's why I have the pointer. So, and I will use marks on the piece of wood here to identify where the pointer is. Now the pointer is just a piece of plastic, you can use whatever you want. So before we start, we'll place the stick shift in its neutral position. Now make sure that when you have the pointer up, that you actually have it in the front of the stick shift, right? So that's important. Now with the stick shift in the neutral position between gears 3 and 4, we'll mark where the pointer is. Right here. That's my neutral position. Right, now I'm going to move it to the 3rd gear, and I'll mark the position of the pointer. And we move it to the 3rd gear as well, and we mark the position of the pointer. We can actually measure the distance between the center point and the backward point and the center point and the forward point. Now that distance here should be the same as that distance, but remember you need to deduct half of the thickness of the stick shift because that is offsetting a bit the forward and the backward direction. From the forward to the center I have 6, and from the middle to the rear position I actually have something like as you can see, 4.5. You see the gearbox, which is the blue part, and then you have the first cable, which is the gear selection cable, and the second cable is the Crossgate cable. The bracket is over here, and you can undo it or release it, and I'll do that with 2 nuts, or actually 2 bolts I should say, and you can slide it a bit backward and forward normally. And the only adjustment that you can do with this bracket is adjusting really the gear selection cable, which is this one. You cannot do anything else with it. It will affect, of course, also the Crossgate cable, but that one you need to adjust later with this connection rod, which is over here. Right, so if I move it backwards, then the stick shift will move. So if you pay attention to the actual movement of the pointer, and you see it. The motorsport cables, they have this additional adjustment here that you have over and above the bracket for the gear selection cable, and I just adjusted it so that the pointer is at the right and correct position, so you can do all the fine adjustment. The adjustment of the Crossgate selection cable is to make sure that the stick shift is not leaning to the left or to the right, but it's actually nice and in the middle. And to do so, I have my own way again. I tied down a pointer to the mechanism here, which is pointing to the other side to a piece of wood. A ruler again will be mark it the same way as we've done it for the gear selection cable. So let me show you the other side. So the far end side of the pointer is pointing on a piece of wood that I just taped on the floor, and basically on top of the roof I actually have it taped up as well, so I can put the marking up with a marker depending on what position we have the cable. So that's all you need to do. So the principle is still same distance to left or right from the middle position. So this is the Crossgate selector cable. I just undid it a little bit, but if I move this back and forth, you should actually see the pointer on the video moving up and down. So make sure that the position of the lever is in its neutral position, which it is, and now mark the pointer on the piece of wood. Move the stick shift to gear number 1. Mark the pointer. Stick shift to gear number 5. I will mark the pointer as soon as it's stable. And the distance between the central position and the lower one, and the central position and the top one, should be about the same. If that is the case, then the adjustment is done correctly. I kind of measure 5 and 5. So to me, that's the correct adjustment, and I no longer need to adjust it any further. If you have to adjust it any further, then you would have to adjust the connection rod at the back of the gearbox. If you had a different distance between the middle and the upper and the middle and the lower marker, then you need to adjust this connection rod, either extend it or make it lower or higher. And now the mechanism should be working just fine. This is the Crossgate selector. And as I said before, this is the adjustment rod right here. You cannot adjust it while it's in place. You have to disconnect one side first to do it, because they have the same thread on both ends on the rod, so that doesn't work. I don't know why they've done it, but that's just the way it is. The default distance between the top and the bottom central part of that rod is around 80 millimeters or 8 centimeters. Between that central nut there and the one here, that's about 80 millimeters or 8 centimeters. That's a very good starting point if you are going to adjust that, and that's the only adjustment you have on standard cables. You can extend the rod and make it shorter or longer to have the stick shift move around a bit. With the motorsport cables, you have additional capability. The last adjustment is the Crossgate bolt. And that should be adjusted when you move the stick shift to the right, extreme to the right. So basically for gears 5 and reverse, that the gap should be no more than 12 millimeters. And that's what I've done. And as you can see, that is actually 12 millimeters. And then you have it correctly adjusted. You need to do this each time you're going to work on the Crossgate cable, or you did an adjustment on the Crossgate cable. And that's basically it. So fellows, that's it. We are done with the shifting mechanism of the Lotus Elise. I hope you enjoyed the videos and that it did bring some help to you if you're doing it yourself. It is a bit of a tedious job to do it, I have to agree. Removing the cables is a lot of work. Putting the new cables back in is a lot of work. But at the end, you have a nice and smooth shifting system, and that's what we all want, because we all want the very best for our Lotus Elises. Now, I'm going to make one more comment. Although I did put the motorsport cables in, I am not 100% happy with them. I think that the original cables are still a bit better in quality. But then again, a test ride will prove how good they are, and we'll see. But I'm afraid I'm a little bit away from a test ride with this car. So keep watching because I have more videos coming. Thank you for viewing. And by the way, if you have any comments or recommendations, please do so. Put a note or a comment up on YouTube, and I will certainly look at it and respond back to you. See you.